The Girl Who Built a Spider by George Brewington. Chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3. Where Have You Been? Teresa drove her spider from downtown Charleston to Folly Road and all the way home along the bicycle lane to Folly Beach. Not many people have seen a girl riding a mechanical spider before, so drivers frequently pulled over to snap her photo with their phones. Bicyclists trying to escape the rain couldn't resist stopping to watch her drive by. Her spider's aluminum spindle legs ended in points, so as she drove along, the points clicked against the wet asphalt, tapping clickety-clickety-click-click, clickety-clickety-click-click. At its top speed, her spider traveled at 12 miles an hour. Folly Beach roads often flooded during storms, so that cars had to find another route or turn around altogether. But flooded roads were no matter for her spider's long legs. Teresa could march right through deep puddles, and if there was a fallen tree in the middle of the road, she could walk her spider over that too. When she had finally arrived at home, it was past 6 o'clock. Teresa was soaked. She decided that one day she should install a retractable umbrella to the back of the spider's seat to keep herself dry. Like many houses in Folly Beach, her home stood 12 feet above the ground on stilts to keep it safe from flooding, caused by frequent hurricanes. Teresa's unlocked the ground floor door with a key tied around her neck. She folded up her spider's legs so that she could carry it through the door. Her father was sitting at the top of the stairs waiting for her, even though he was supposed to be at the hospital. "Teresa, where have you been?" But the dim light of the single bulb in the stairwell, she could see his thinning hair was pointing in 3 different directions from running his hands through it as he had been imagining the worst. "I thought you were still at work, Dad," she said softly. Her father was a nurse at Charleston City Hospital. He was still wearing his blue scrubs. He hurried down the stairs and held her tightly in his arms. "I came home to prepare for the storm. You were supposed to stay inside. Do you know how worried I've been? You should have texted me. You should have called. You should have never left the house. Why would you scare me like that?" He was talking so fast and squeezing her so hard, she wondered if she should even try to answer until he got all his worry out of his system. "Teresa, please tell me, where did you go?" "Well, first of all, let me start by saying it was a school-sponsored event." "Baby girl, do you see how the rain is coming down? This storm could become a full-fledged hurricane. There's so much to do. We need to check all the batteries in the emergency kit. We need to board up the windows and make ice and fill the tub with water and all I could imagine was that you'd been caught in a—" Then he turned away from her and put his head in his hands. Teresa knew why. Her mother's drowning wasn't his fault at all, but he blamed himself for it every day. "I'm sorry, Dad," was all she could say, and she wrapped her arms around him and kissed his shoulder. "These scrubs are dirty," he laughed, beginning finally to calm down. "I know, I can't believe I just kissed them. Totally gross." They both sat down on the bottom stair, listening to the thunder cracking and the rain coming down. Then, even though the wind was really shaking the windows, he took a deep breath and dared to ask. "What school-sponsored event?" He sighed. Teresa felt guilty. Maybe she shouldn't have snuck out of the house to enter a science fair when a storm was coming. But to be part of a contest where she could show off her creation was something she had wanted so badly without really knowing why. "I entered my spider in the Charleston County Middle School Science Fair." Then she had to sit through the longest pause ever. "And?" her father finally asked. She couldn't help but smile. "I won first place." A moment ago her father had been scared and panicked and crazy-haired mess, but he smiled and hugged her again, dirty scrubs and all. "First place? My baby girl? You won first place? Why didn't you tell me, Teresa? I would have wanted to see you win." "Daddy," she said, "would you have let me go? With a tropical storm on the way? I'm surprised you're not driving us to a hotel in Georgia right now." He shook his head and closed his eyes. "You're right. Of course you're right. But you should not have snuck out like that. I'm the grown-up in this household, you know." Teresa tried not to laugh. "I am." "Okay, Dad. You're the grown-up." Another pause. But this one was good. She could feel his pride for her growing. So, can I see the ribbon or trophy or whatever it is my brilliant daughter got for disobeying me? She removed the blue ribbon from her backpack. It was as big as her head. He held it up like it was the most magnificent thing in the world. First place. My baby girl. Now is the hard part. Daddy, she said. First place, and second and third actually, comes with an incredible, amazing, once-in-a-lifetime offer. It would be ridiculous for me to refuse. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and her father squeezed his eyes shut. Do I want to know what this offer entails? He asked. I don't think you do, she whispered. He shook his head, trying so hard to be the grown-up. You just had to win, didn't you? Yeah, she said smugly. I really had to. Chapter 4. Gifted. The next 2.5 weeks at James Island Middle were exhausting. Teresa had always been an introvert, so to have to answer so many questions from classmates about what her summer at Flax Industries might be like really wore her out. Will you learn all of Dr. Flax's secrets? What are you going to invent? Will you be his best friend? Will you be rich? Can you take photos? Will you be in 8th grade next year, or will you go straight to college? Will you skip college and go straight to working at Flax Industries? And the weirdest question of all, are you gifted? Teresa had never thought of herself as gifted or even all that smart. She simply loved goofing around with motors and welding scrap metal and bringing the mechanical creatures in her imagination to life. She never thought of building robots as work or even science. Just play. In fact, she'd begun to wonder if maybe she played with robots too much. She had been friends with Kayla, Tamika, and Darby since kindergarten, and they had always liked to play together, until this year. All 3 of the other girls had made the James Island Middle School soccer team last January. Kayla played center back while Tamika and Darby were alternating goalies. They practiced together after school. They played games twice a week, including Saturdays, and the 3 of them talked about soccer all the time. They talked about who outskilled whom, and which schools they could beat, and whether they might go to the Charleston County Middle School Soccer Championship next year. Boring. Soccer was a game where you tried to kick a ball to one end of the field while the other team tried to kick it to the other end. That was it. There was nothing else to it. How could they possibly talk about such an absurd game all day, every day? But her 3 friends since kindergarten could and did. What Teresa liked to do after school was to weld pieces of aluminum scrap metal together at her uncle's Robert's auto repair shop. She would buy toy robot kits that included servo motors, pre-manufactured parts, and instructions that told you how to create the robot on the cover of the box. But she always wanted her robots to be bigger and better, so she would replace the legs and arms of the robots with her own welded creations. She carried these robots in progress in her backpack and tinkered with them at lunch. Kayla, Tamika, and Darby still sat next to her in the cafeteria, and the 4 of them still sang along to Disney musicals that they played on their phones. They still drew on one another's book covers and pooled their spare change for donuts from the vending machine. But no matter what, their conversation would inevitably turn to soccer, and when it did, Teresa would grow quiet, tinkering on her robots with her head down. That was all fine. She might have felt left out sometimes, but they were still her friends. But once kids found out that she had won the Charleston County Middle School Science Fair and that she was going to be an inventor at Flax Industries, something changed. Suddenly, she was different. She was the smart one. She was the oddball. She was gifted, and the word felt nothing like a compliment. When she got a B on her final exam in social studies, she wasn't surprised, but Tamika was. You got a B? I thought you were gifted. Teresa didn't think Tamika was trying to be mean. She was just shocked. It was a relief when the year ended. She didn't know what awaited her at Flax Industries, but it would be a welcome change from being the oddball of James Island Middle. She was excited to get to know John and Ashley. They seemed to like to make things the same way she did. For 2.5 weeks, she had been having imaginary conversations with them, and she already liked them. even if Ashley seemed a little bit arrogant. But what if they didn't like her? This very prospect kept her up the night before the first day of her internship. She was as anxious as she was excited. She could hear her father downstairs in his bedroom talking to himself. He was anxious too. Because it was so late and her mind was running in circles so fast, she wondered if she was dreaming when she heard a light, persistent tapping on her bedroom window. She ignored it the first 3 times, but then the tap, tap, tap a 4th time. It was real. She tiptoed to the window, but immediately jumped back. There was a boy outside, standing on the top rung of a ladder. He kept tapping the glass with his finger. She stood to the side of the window so she could get a closer look without letting the boy see her.
Teresa? First place winner Teresa Brown? I need your help. I must get into Flax Industries. You're my only hope. Please.
It was a hot and humid June night, and yet the boy was wearing a puffy black winter coat with his hood on and a scarf covering most of his face. His eyes shone a brilliant and unnatural blue. Really, wrapped up the way he was, his eyes were the only part of his body she could see. When she approached the window to get a better look, he plastered himself against the glass, nearly losing his balance.
My name's Thomas Edison, and I beg you to listen. Dr. Flax doesn't realize it, but one of his inventions is an enormous threat to this planet, and I must destroy it. I know that once you're inside, you'll be able to smuggle me in without his knowing.
Teresa stood there staring at his blue eyes, almost hypnotized by them. She thought she must be dreaming until the crack under her bedroom door lit up, letting her know her father had turned on the hall light. "Teresa, are you okay? Why are you still awake?" He was calling to her from the bottom of the stairs.
I'm fine, Dad.
She knew how he was. If he sensed anything resembling a threat to her safety, he wouldn't let her go to Flax Industries in the morning. The boy tapped the glass again, furiously without stopping. But this time Teresa turned to face the window and put her nose up to his.
You should know it's very dangerous to be knocking on a stranger's bedroom window in the middle of the night, Thomas Edison.
The boy in winter clothes shook his head desperately.
We aren't strangers. I introduced myself, and I already know you are the quite famous first-place spider builder Teresa Brown.
Teresa did not feel comforted or famous by this explanation.
If you want to get into the laboratory, why don't you go ask Dr. Flax yourself? If you think one of his inventions needs to be destroyed, why don't you tell him?
The boy paused, as if calculating how much he could say.
Because even if I thought he'd believe me, my sister would be in grave danger if I said anything of the sort.
Your sister? Teresa gasped.
I can't say any more,
he said nervously through the glass.
And you can't tell anyone I was here either. That would be just as bad.
Well, she said, you're not making a very convincing argument. Teresa, what are you doing? Her father said, knocking on her bedroom door. Teresa waved desperately at Thomas to leave.
You have to get out of here, now! Go! Please, Teresa,
he said one last time before descending down the ladder.
When the opportunity comes, please let me into the laboratory. The safety of the planet depends on it.
Teresa, her father asked one more time. Who are you talking to?
Myself,
she answered.
I'm counting the stars. I'm too anxious to sleep.
Her father sighed. Me too.